Alright, what's going on? Welcome everyone! Today we're talking about the WRX. So I'm taking a small break from the STI behind me here, just because I'm knocking out a whole bunch of small, tedious little things on it, and I don't think it's really fun to record or watch or edit, any of that kind of stuff. So we're skipping past that, and we're going to do this one. A cost breakdown. I do these on literally every build after we finish them. A cost breakdown of how much money it costs to build a 732 wheel horsepower WRX. Now I am specifically saying WRX. If you were doing this on an STI, you're going to save yourself a little bit of money because you're not having to buy the 5x114 hubs, the Brimbos, the drivetrain, all of that stuff. For us, we swapped an STI 6-speed in here. While it did have a small reverse issue, we did get that sorted. The reverse gear, it looked like somebody had tried to go in reverse from like 5th gear into 6 and missed 6 and went straight into reverse because it was all rounded off. Regardless of the fact, that was fixed. We got it in. Like I say, with all of this, there's cheaper ways and there's more expensive ways to do everything. I feel like I went the absolute cheapest way of doing this. Everything in this car is DIY'd, from the fabrication aspect of things, from the engine building, everything like that I did myself because A, I'm cheap as f*** and I don't like to pay other people to do things if I can do it myself. And B, every time I do one of these, it's more of a learning experience because I learned something new along the way of doing every single one. Like the rotated kit, that's the first rotated kit I've fully fabricated and welded out myself, and I'm extremely happy with it. It did exceptionally well on the dyno for that turbo, but we'll get into all that here in a little bit. So, car made 732 wheel horsepower, 605 foot-pounds of torque on E85, and around 513 wheel horsepower and like 387 or 389 foot-pounds of torque on pump gas. And those are Mustang numbers. I know people get caught up in the numbers. If you convert those over to dyno jet on E85, I think it came out to like 813 wheel horsepower. Regardless of the fact, the car's fucking rowdy. Let's jump into costs of things. So for the core of everything, we're going to start talking about the short block here. So I have an abundance of used case halves sitting around, so I had those for free. If you're looking at building your own engine or building your own motor, you can get case halves for like $100 on OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, all of these other places. If you're looking to get a used set of case halves, just make sure there's no damage to the main. The block itself isn't warped, it's salvageable and things like that. So $100 or free depending on where you get them from. Next up, the machine shop cost to bore out and machine the block. With all of the blocks that I build, and I suggest you do this also, even if it fits a 99.5 piston, always step up and go to a 99.75. Send your pistons out to your machine shop with your engine so that way they can bore and hone that engine strictly to the pistons that you are sending them. That's how I do all of mine. Aside from that, machine shop cost to close deck the engine, up drill the block for 1/2-inch head studs, and all that stuff came out to about $1,500. Next up, we've got the 1/2-inch head studs. We have the out front 1/2-inch head studs in here. Those come in at about $524 for those head studs. You can use IAG, out front, whatever one that you're going to be using. For connecting rods in this car, I have never used these before, so we're trying something new here. These are Brian Crower connecting rods. Those came in at about those came in at about $578. So far, they've been holding up pretty well. The car's tuned to 42 PSI, and we haven't bent a rod yet, so that's probably a good sign. For the pistons, we're using Manley Platinum Series pistons, I believe, or the Sport Compact. I'll have the full build list linked down below in the description for you guys, so if this is something you want to cut, copy, paste, and emulate, you totally can. But those Manley pistons came in at about $652. Now, for the case bolts themselves, for most engines I just use OEM case bolts. For this one, I wanted to ball out a little bit, and we have some ARP case bolts in this engine. Honestly, it's just kind of some bling factor. All of mine are torqued down to OEM spec, which ARP totally says you can do. If you want the extra clamping force from the ARP hardware, you will have to machine the block for those. Just keep that in mind if you want to go to the full extent of the hardware. For bearings, I run King bearings for the mains and the rods. I think for both of those combined, it was $240 for the main and the rod bearings. Cylinder heads. For camshafts, we are running Kelford 272 cams. My first time using Kelford, normally I use Brian Crower because they're dropping cam. With the Kelfords, you do have to machine or just kind of clean up the casting a little bit to clearance it for the cams. If you are going to be using those Kelfords, they are about $937. And these are kind of some of the big ticket items right now is the block itself. Once we get into some of the smaller accessory stuff, it kind of, I promise the prices go down on some stuff. For the valves, we have GSC intake and exhaust valves combined. It's like $240 for both of them. Spring set, we're using GSC titanium spring set with the retainers and spring seats and all that good stuff, as well as the GSC Viton valve seals. If you're looking at all those GSC components right there, the valves, $240 like we said, the spring set at $266. And then I kind of skipped over the crankshaft. It's an OEM 2019 plus nitrated crank. You can get those for miscellaneous prices. I think this one was $411. Now, because we're making oodles of power in this thing, which we like and is a little bit terrifying, we need a drivetrain that can actually support the amount of power and the amount of torque this thing is putting down. Otherwise, we would be breaking things left and right, especially with that old 5-speed that was in this car. Now, for a clutch, you guys saw we have the ACT Mod Twin in this car. I had that clutch in this car prior, but we were having some alignment issues with the flywheel, so I bought a new one. That it's not a cheap clutch by any means, but by far it's my favorite clutch for a street car like this because it's very usable. It's not overly aggressive to the point where you're going to hate driving the car. That clutch comes in at about $1,620. There are plenty of cheaper options out there if you wanted like a 6-puck or something along those lines just to keep the cost down a little bit more. But for a quality clutch, I say that's not something you should skimp out on because a bad clutch or a bad feeling clutch in your car is just going to make you hate driving it. You're just not going to want to drive it. So I would say don't try to cut corners on that one. Now, like I said, for all my WRX friends out there like myself, you're gonna need an STI 6-speed. Your 5-speed, don't build it, okay? You're gonna spend less money swapping in an STI 6-speed than you would building a 5-speed. Now, prices on STI 6-speeds do vary quite a bit. At the end of the day, I think I ended up getting this STI 6-speed for about $500. I traded some parts that I had sitting around for it, but I think the total cost of those parts came up to like 500 bucks. I had to completely buy a new reverse gear, new reverse synchros. We also replaced 4, 5, and 6 synchros in that transmission while we did have it torn apart. So $500 for the transmission, $500 for the repair on the transmission that's including parts. And then, like I said, hubs, different rear diff, axles, Brimbos, all that stuff. I want to say I spent around $2,000. Way more expensive options out there for STI 6-speed swaps, but keep in mind, I bought all of these components piece by piece. I would look on eBay, 541 Motorsports, and all these other places online to try to get the best deals that I could to try to keep cost at as low as possible, because at the end of the day, when it comes to building a car, you want quality components. OEM STI components are quality, but you want to try to get them as cheap as possible. So I think for the hubs, the rear diff, all that stuff is about $2,000. And then to control the transmission, or the DCCD, I should say, you're going to need a DCCD controller. There's options like Spider, Map DCCD out there, a whole bunch of options. We have the Map DCCD controller. If you're looking at that one, it comes in at $415. I personally have been really liking it. When we were going up over the passes and we got into some snow, I swapped it over to snow mode. And honestly, the car does fantastic. Like, it's easy to install. 10 out of 10. Highly suggest getting it. It's some DIY wiring, but it's really not too bad. Now getting into some of the more engine-related components that you guys see up here. For the exhaust manifold, we are running the Killer B equal length header with their DIY rotated up pipe. Now that DIY up pipe is literally just a pipe. I had to weld on the flange, I had to cut the pipe, measure the pipe, get the pipe to where I wanted it to be for the turbo location. But honestly, it's a pretty good deal if you're looking at doing it. For that Killer B setup, I think I got it for 1,200 bucks. For the up pipe, the V-bands, and the exhaust manifold, 1,200 bucks really ain't too bad. Now for the rotated kit itself, like I said, it's a DIY rotated kit that I built, so it only cost me material. And it really wasn't that bad in material. It was 500 bucks for all the piping, for the flanges, for the V-band. Now, keep in mind, if you don't have a welder and you don't have consumables for your welder, it is going to be more money because obviously you have to go and buy a welder and everything like that. But to be able to DIY it yourself for 500 bucks, that's not bad. Considering rotated kits out there like 5-6K, sometimes like 4,500 without a turbo, that's a steal on wheels. And I had like spare AN fittings and lines sitting around to be able to make like oil feed lines, oil return lines. If you're making that stuff, you're probably going to be spending another 80 bucks on lines and fittings. Now attached to our beautiful rotated kit right there, we have a Precision 6466 with the 0.86 hot side. I bought that turbo off of Matt, so I got that turbo for about $2,000. That's pretty close to retail on one of those. It was brand new, 0 miles on it, so it's about $2,000 for the 6466. And like I said, if you get a cheaper turbo, if you get a ball bearing turbo, a journal bearing turbo, prices can heavily vary. But for the power level that we're at, the turbo does absolutely fantastic. Now for the catback, that's heavily going to vary on what you want, to be honest. I have the Tomei Extreme on here. My first time running a Tomei, now I'm a Tomei fanboy. I got a Tomei on this white 04 STI behind me, Tomei on this car. I'll probably toss Tomeis on other cars in the future. It's honestly a pretty good exhaust. It is very loud. Keep that in mind though. So the cost for that Tomei was about 1,150 bucks. Like I said, if you get a cheaper exhaust, you could probably get a catback for like 500 bucks, like a quality one. So you can knock prices off of this stuff as much as you want as you go down this list. For the external wastegate, we are running a Tile 38mm MVS external wastegate. Those things are pretty standard in price, 340 bucks for them. For the boost controller, we have a Mac 4-port boost controller. I buy those off of Amazon, and they're like legit like 50 bucks. 50 bucks for a boost controller. It's a screaming deal. All you gotta do is wire it in. It's 2 wires. You literally cannot mess it up either. 2 wires, that's it. For the blow-off valve, we have a Tile Q. That's what I actually run on everything, is the Tile Q blow-off valve. Those things are actually pretty cheap, 270 bucks for a Tile Q. Just whatever blow-off valve you want. I like the Tile Q though. Now for the intercooler, as you can see, we had this on the previous setup on this car when this car was a green speed compliant build. So the Grimspeed front mount intercooler did carry over from that last setup, as well as some of the other smaller bits in this car. But for the most part, you can get ETS, which makes plug and play piping for rotated kits. I did modify this piping in this car for this kit, so I built the pipe, I fabricated and built the pipe up there. We got that one right there, so not terrible. For the front mount with all the piping, $1,600. That piping kit is going to be for an OEM stock location turbo. You will have to modify that piping if you do decide to get this Grimspeed kit. But for the most part, it was only 2 pipes that we really had to modify. So speed density kit, it's a DIY speed density kit. I do them on all of them. I have the same one on that car that I haven't finished quite yet. Amazon, you can buy an IAT sensor, a GM IAT sensor for like 30 bucks. It comes with a pigtail OEM speed density, or DIY speed density kit. Like I said, a lot of this, the ways I'm able to keep costs lower on doing this stuff is being able to DIY this stuff. And I understand if you don't have like a garage like this, or you don't have a shop, like I did all of this in a garage. If you have a garage, you can do this. If you have a shop, you can do this. If you have a carport, I probably wouldn't try to do it. You could try, but at minimum, I would say if you have a garage. Intake manifold, we have the Process West Street version of the intake manifold on this car because I did want to retain AC in it because it still is a daily driver. And I've sacrificed air conditioning too many times on too many prior builds. And this time I told myself I was keeping AC, and we kept AC. So that Process West manifold comes in, it's a little bit steep, $2,031. You can get the AMS manifold if you wanted, the long runner, which I believe those ones are around $1,300, $1,400 for the AMS. I've never had a Process West, and this one looks absolutely beautiful. So Process West, $2,000 if you want one. IAG Competition Series AOS, because obviously with this, we don't want to filter things back into our turbo inlet because it's just going to get chooched by the turbo. And I can tell you right now, there's a lot of stuff that comes out of that thing. So if you want the IAG Competition Series AOS, you are going to have to buy a Street Series and then buy the adapter for the Competition Series. I want to say that's going to run you about $600 right there for the AOS itself and the adaptation for the Competition. Coil radiator in this car because my CSF decided to pee fluid everywhere, so that coil radiator, 360 bucks. Oil pan kit on this car, we are running the Killer Bee Super G oil pan kit, which has baffles and trapdoors and all that fun stuff in there to keep the oil where it needs to be. If you're looking at that kit, it is kind of steep, $751 for the oil pan, the oil pickup, and the windage tray, and then it has a built-in baffle inside of the oil pan as well. You can get the standard Killer Bee oil pan kit if you want. You can get IAG, you can get whatever one you prefer. I personally stick with the Killer Bee. For the map sensor, we have a Cobb 4-bar map sensor in here. Thing comes in at about $205. For the fuel system in this car, which I think about covers everything else, for the bare basics to be able to make this power. For the fuel system, we are running a radium dual hanger in the fuel tank. Those come in about $450. We have 2 Wall Bureau 450s in there. Those are about $200, $100 each for those fuel pumps. We have a Dash 8 feed line going from the fuel tank up here into the engine bay. That comes in at about $80 for that fuel line. And the fittings, if you want, which I would highly advise, you don't have to, but I would really strongly suggest you do, get the radium inline fuel filter. Buy the fuel filter. It's like an extra $100. Get the fuel filter. Fuel rails, we have the Cobb fuel rails on here, which look pretty nice. They're $200 for those fuel rails. A set of ID 1700s. I felt like, because I know myself, if I go bigger than a 1700 injector, I'm gonna have Josh push the car as hard as he absolutely can to its absolute limit of the fuel system. And by limiting myself in the fuel system, we can limit the car a little bit more because we're not trying to push it as hard. So ID 1700s, well, the injector duty cycle is a bit high on E85, mainly a pump gas car. Fuel pressure regulator, we have the Aeromotive A1000. Oh, the fuel injectors came in at $1,200. The A1000 came in at $250. That's really the fuel pressure regulator I use on all of these things. Well, I think that about covers the bulk of everything on here. Like I said, for the most part, everything has been DIY. Now, if you are a WRX owner like myself, to cut, copy, paste this build with the 6-speed swap, with the Brimbos, with all of that stuff, you're gonna be looking at a cost of about $24,000 if you DIY everything. Now, if this was an STI to begin with and we didn't have to swap the transmission, buy the gear sets, buy the axle, realistically it would probably be more around the price range of $19,500, excluding the DCCD controller, the transmission, the drive shaft, all of that type of stuff. Probably would have came in at about $19,000 just in parts costs. Now, like I said, if you are not DIYing this stuff, it is going to get wildly more expensive for you. Like I said, the main reason we're able to do a lot of these builds is because I do DIY them. Having a shop build you something like this, you're probably going to be looking at 10 to 12, maybe even $14,000 in labor tacked on top of that. So at a $24,000 price tag for parts, tack on another, we'll take the intro, $14,000 in labor. You're realistically going to be looking at like $38,000 to $40,000 for a build like this. Like I said, if you're paying a shop. If they're building the block, they're building a rotating kit, all that stuff. And like I said, there's ways you can make power cheaper, there's ways you can make power more expensive. I feel like this is a pretty, I don't want to say affordable, but I feel like this is a pretty, they're all howling for some reason. They're so cute. I feel like for the price tag of $24,000 DIYing everything, I'm happy with it. Now, I do want to give a massive, absolute massive shout out to the companies that did jump in heavily. Rally Sport Direct. You guys are absolutely freaking awesome. If you guys are looking at doing a build like this and you want to save a little bit of money on parts, use my discount code. I'll link it down below, and it'll also be like right on the screen right there. It'll save you 10% on some brands' parts. Not all of them, but it will save you 10% on some companies' parts. As well as Flat Iron Tuning for supplying a lot of the drivetrain stuff for the 6-speed swaps, such as the MAP DCCD controller, the shift linkage, Killer B for supplying the oil pan from our last setup over to this setup. So just a huge shout out to the companies that did jump in on this and help out. Now, I know the question's going to ask, what can I do for tuning for a setup like this? If you're looking at doing something like this, your resources are kind of limited for tuning. You've got open source, you've got ECU tech at the moment, and you've got standalone options. I hope that answers some questions on this. I did just get the drivetrain fixed in this car. There were no bushings in the drive shaft, which is my fault. I kind of overlooked that when we did the swap, so it was making a god-awful rocks in a box type of noise, but it's fixed. So I'll go get some driving videos of this car coming up in the next video or the one after it. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I know you guys want to see this car rip. I've been ripping it around the past couple of days, and let me tell you, it's an absolute blast. That's all I got for you guys on this one. I hope that answered the questions, and like I said, the full build list will be down below in the description for those of you that do want to emulate this. That's all I got for you guys. So if you liked the video, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button, turn black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, cyan, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, and you want to be, we are taking this thing out to the drag strip. Actually, I just got off the phone with Josh earlier today. This thing is going to go drag racing as soon as the season opens. I need to get some slicks ordered for this car. Josh told me he'd tell me what slicks to buy for it, so we'll get some slicks ordered for this thing and take it out to the drag strip. But the 04 STI should be running in a day or so. The 17 STI's engine should be coming back soon. So with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.